Topic 4, Information Security Policy. Part 2. For policies to be effective, they must be properly developed using industry-accepted practices and formally approved by management. They must be distributed using all appropriate methods. They must be read by all employees. They must be understood by all employees. They must be formally agreed to by act or affirmation, and they must be uniformly applied and enforced. It is often useful to view policy development as a three-part project. In the first part of the project, policy is designed and written, or in the case of an outdated policy, redesigned and rewritten. In the second part, a senior manager or executive at the appropriate level reviews and formally approves the document. In the third part of the development project, management processes are established to perpetuate the policy within the organization. The first part is an exercise in project management, while the latter two require adherence to good business practices, distribution or electronic distribution. Unless the organization can prove that the policy actually reached the end users, it cannot be enforced. Distribution of classified policies requires additional levels of control in the labeling of the document, in the dissemination of the new policy, and in the collection and destruction of older versions to assure the confidentiality of the information contained within the policy documents themselves. Barriers to employees reading policies can arise from literacy or language issues. Visually impaired employees require additional assistance either through audio or large-type versions of the document. Multinational organizations also must deal with the challenges of gauging reading levels and language translations for foreign citizens. There are a number of tools that can help assess the readability of policies. The Flesh Reading Ease test evaluates the writing on a scale of 1 to 100. The higher the score, the easier it is to understand the writing. The Flesh-Kincaid grade level test evaluates writing on a U.S. grade school level. While a 14th grade level may be appropriate for a textbook, it is too high for an organizational policy intended for a broad audience. For most corporate documents, a score of 7 to 8 is preferred. To be certain that employees understand the policy, the document must be written at a reasonable reading level, with minimal technical jargon and management terminology. The next step is to use some form of assessment to gauge how well employees understand the policy's underlying issues. Quizzes and other forms of examination can be employed to assess quantitatively which employees understand the policy by earning a minimum score, and which employees require additional training and awareness efforts before the policy can be enforced. Policies must be agreed to by act or affirmation. Agreement by act occurs when the employee performs an action which requires them to acknowledge understanding of the policy prior to use of a technology or organizational resource. What if an employee refuses explicitly to agree to comply with the policy? It seems clear that failure to agree to a policy is tantamount to refusing to work and thus may be grounds for termination. The final component of the design and implementation of effective policies is uniform and partial enforcement. As in law enforcement, policy enforcement must be able to withstand external scrutiny. If an employee is punished, censured, or dismissed as a result of a refusal to follow policy, and is subsequently able to demonstrate that the policies are not uniformly applied or enforced, the organization may find itself facing punitive as well as compensatory damages. The need for effective policy management has led to the emergence of a class of software tools that supports policy development, implementation, and maintenance. Tools like the Vigilant Policy Center keep policies confidential behind password-protected intranets and generate periodic reports indicating which employees have and have not read and acknowledged the policies. Like any major project, a policy development or redevelopment project should be well planned, properly funded, and aggressively managed to ensure that it is completed on time and within budget. One way to accomplish this goal is to use a systems development lifecycle. The policy development team should attain support from senior management, support and active involvement of IT management, specifically the CIO, clear articulation of goals, participation of the correct individuals from the communities of interest affected by the policies. This would include legal, human resources, and end users. A project champion should be assigned with sufficient stature and prestige, and a capable project manager should be acquired. A detailed outline of the scope of the policy development project and sound estimates for the cost and scheduling of the project should also be developed. The analysis phase should include a new or recent risk assessment or IT audit, documenting the current information security needs of the organization. It should also include the gathering of key reference materials, including any existing policies. The first task in the design phase is the drafting of the actual policy document. While this task can be done by a committee, it is most commonly done by a single author. There are a number of references and resources available on the web, through professional literature, and from peers and consultants. Next, the development team or committee reviews the work of the primary author and makes recommendations about its revision. Once the committee approves the document, it goes to the approving manager or executive for sign-off. In the implementation phase, the team must create a plan to distribute and verify the distribution of the policies. Members of the organization must explicitly acknowledge that they have received and read the policy. This is compliance. The simplest way to document acknowledgement of a written policy is to attach a cover sheet that states, "I have received, read, understood, and agreed to this policy." The employee's signature and date provide a paper trail of his or her receipt of the policy. One common example is with software, where the user must agree to certain terms or conditions before the software is installed. During the maintenance phase, the policy development team monitors, maintains, and modifies the policy as needed to ensure that it remains effective as a tool to meet changing threats. The policy should have a built-in mechanism via which users can report problems with the policy, preferably anonymously. Periodic review should also be built into the process. There are other approaches to information security policy development. For example, NIST Special Publication 800-18 Revision 1, the Guide for Developing Security Plans for Federal Information Systems. If you work with the federal government, you may be required to know this document. Just as information systems and information security projects must have a champion and a manager, so must policies. The policy champion position combined with the manager position is called the policy administrator. Typically, this person is a mid-level staff member who is responsible for the creation, revision, distribution, and storage of the policy. In a changing environment, policies can retain their effectiveness only if they are periodically reviewed for currency and accuracy and modified to keep them updated. Any policy document should contain a properly organized schedule of reviews. Generally, a policy should be reviewed at least annually. To facilitate policy reviews, the policy administrator should implement a mechanism by which individuals can easily make recommendations for revisions to the policies and other related documentation. Recommendation methods could include email, office mail, or an anonymous Dropbox. Once the policy has come up for review, all comments should be examined and management-approved changes should be implemented. In some organizations, policies are drafted and published without a date, leaving users of the policy unaware of its age or status. This practice can create problems, including legal ones, if employees are complying with an out-of-date policy. Ideally, the policy document should include its date of origin, along with the dates, if any, of revisions. Some policies may need a sunset clause, particularly if they govern information use for a short-term association with second-party businesses or agencies. A final note on policy. As mentioned earlier, while policies can help organizations avoid litigation, their first and foremost function is to inform employees of what is and is not acceptable behavior in the organization. Policy development is meant to improve employee productivity and prevent potentially embarrassing situations. In reality, most employees inherently want to do what is right. If properly educated on what is acceptable and what is not, they will choose to follow the rules for acceptable behavior.